Mm.
Hello and welcome to the breakdown. I am Tara Setmayer. This is the Rick Wilson, and we are 41 days away from the inauguration of Joe Biden, and it is the beginning of Hanukkah. So I'd like to wish a happy Hanukkah to all of our Jewish brethren out there. Let there be light. Tonight, we'll be joined by Jim Galloway, a veteran reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, covering all things politics down there in Georgia. And there's lots to talk about with that. I think there's a Senate race or something happening down there. I don't know. But we're going to talk
Yeah,
about
I heard
that
of
with
that.
him, right, Rick? Yeah, we heard of that. Something happening there in Georgia. We're not quite sure. We'll be talking to Jim Galloway about that in a little bit. Of course, we'd like to hear from you. Ask us your questions at hashtag AskTheBreakdown on Twitter. You know the hashtag. Ask us the questions, and we shall answer them, hopefully. We'll have an answer for you. And you can also break it down new school with us through Zoom. You can join us as a live caller. There's our Zoom ID, and we'll take your calls on air later on in the show. So, Rick, it was inevitable.
Yes.
It was inevitable. Given
Hmm.
everything that we've seen so far, we thought Safe
Of
Harbor
course.
Day was supposed to be a safe harbor from all of the crazy. But no, another norm has been blown through. Donald Trump
Hmm.
is now full throatedly calling for the overturning of the election. He wants the results overturned.
Yep.
He's been tweeting like a lunatic for the last couple of days, even more so than usual. The election is rigged. Now we've got this case in Texas that they're hanging their hats on, which is an absolute legal absurdity, but very dangerous. We're going to talk about that in a second, given the implications of what they're trying to imply here, with one state suing another state to overturn 20 million votes. Um, this is unprecedented in so many ways, given the legal kabuki theater that they're continuing to go through here. And yet they continue to do it. And we have found out now the lawsuit in Texas is different than what happened in Pennsylvania, the one that the Supreme Court in one line
Hmm.
said, no, we're not taking this up. This is something completely different. And what they're doing in Texas is basically contesting the election results in four other states: in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Michigan. States that have already certified their elections. They've already had multiple recounts. The certified election results have been done. But no, Texas is saying, no, no, no. We're alleging that this is fraudulent. And we want these 20 million, it's about 20 million votes of all four of those states, thrown out.
Hmm.
And 106 Republicans in Congress, that's 1/4 of the entire US Congress, has signed on to this lawsuit. 17
Hmm.
attorneys general of other states that have Republican attorneys generals have signed on to this. What is happening, Rick?
Well, Tara, what you're seeing is sedition in action. These are desperate moments. Look, the origin story of this is, of course, Ken Paxton, who is lavishly corrupt, is looking for a way to aggrandize himself with Trump, looking for help from Trump at some level, perhaps for a federal pardon, who knows. Um, but this is a sign that what was the Republican Party is now a completely dedicated personality cult built and designed to service Donald Trump. That's all they do. That's all they are. That's all we've got now. And what they're doing is, of course, grotesque. It is, of course, absurd. It is, of course, obscene. It is, of course, anti-small d democratic in a very fundamental way. But it is also what we have come to expect. Now, you are correct. There is a risk factor here. The Supreme Court will take this up. But the major thing that's happening here is that Donald Trump is finding one more way to grift a few more days, to scam a little more, to try to, as he always does, as a sort of a reckless day trading gambler, trying to push the line, trying to get himself into the game for one last turn. And it is absurd and obscene, as I said, but it is something that I think these 17 attorney generals and the 106 members of the House, they are telling us that they do not believe in the American system. They do not believe in the American system of government. They don't believe in the fundamental principles of voting. They don't believe in the fundamental principles of federalism. They don't believe in the Electoral College. They believe in Donald Trump. That is all they have left. That is all they are. He is definitionally the center of their universe. And so I find this, as offensive as anyone. And the Sedition 17 will go down in history as people who, as sworn officers of the court, as the highest law enforcement officers in their respective states, in an effort to fraudulently overturn an election, a democratic, free, and fair election. It is unbelievably vile, but it is also unbelievably now par for the course.
Absolutely. And let's take a look at who the hell these seditious 17 are and find out when we can vote them the hell out of office.
It felt very
You know,
swinging 60s with that music bed under there. I liked it.
I know. It was very like 60s spy movie kind of like,
Right?
kind of like
Right?
who are these people and let's vote them out.
The
What's
spy who
interesting
stole an
about
election.
That's right. The spy stole an election. What's interesting about all of this is that it's forcing people to pay attention to who their state officials are. A lot of folks probably wouldn't be able to name who their state attorney general is or who their state secretary of state is. But this is forcing people now to pay attention to that and make sure that they know who these people are, because this is why we always say politics are local. This affects you every day, and we have a new kitty. We're
Tiki
gonna
has a
have to.
rival.
Tiki has a rival. Tiki's around here somewhere
Tiki
too.
has
We
a
might get a
rival.
double. We might get a double dose
Double
of
kitty.
feline kitty. Yes, I love it. Now, Rick, you have to tell
Yes.
me the name of your cat.
The cat has no name. Everyone will be mad at me for this in the family, but the cat has no name.
Literally,
Sometimes
the
Mrs.
cat.
Kitty, but mostly nameless. She's
He's
famous on
not
the internet
lying.
as Nameless Cat,
There he is. And we
but
would
she's being
expect
very
nothing
shy
less.
now.
We would expect nothing less from the infamous Rick Wilson with the nameless cat.
The Nameless Cat.
um,
I feel like a
uh,
Bond villain. Yeah.
yes, well, it's very appropriate with the music we played just now. It's very fitting. It's on brand.
She laid in some
Um,
claws on the way out.
Uh-oh. Well, that's she's telling you, give me a damn name.
It's all right.
So, speaking of Bond villains, Ted freaking Cruz, okay, who actually doesn't have enough charisma to be a Bond villain, is actually chomping at the bit here to represent this nonsense Texas lawsuit in front of the Supreme Court, if God forbid the Supreme Court actually agrees to take it up. I can't stand Ted Cruz, and I never have been able to stand him. I've always found him to be just a phony, insufferable, obnoxious, power hungry, craven coward. After
But tell us how
he
you
was
really feel, Tara.
actually a sniveling coward, to use his own language, to describe Donald Trump at the time when Trump went after his wife and his father.
Right.
And yet here we are 4 years later, and Ted Cruz is begging Donald Trump to let him represent the campaign in front of the Supreme Court. It is just infuriating every single day, because Ted Cruz, Mr. I went to Harvard Law, and I'm the smartest man in the room, and I'll do a filibuster and will grandstand in support of constitutional principles like he did when he shut down the government over healthcare back in 2013, I think it was. This is the guy that wants to go in front of the Supreme Court to argue this frivolous case that is so against federalism, and states' rights, like Republicans are supposed to
Hmm.
stand for. What happened to all of that? All of that's out the window. It is just hard to imagine. If you would have asked me 4 years ago, would we be here right now when with the Republican Party being the party of illiberalism, anti-democracy, conspiracy theory wingnuts, disputing a free and fair election? I would never have believed it. I would never have believed that the party of Lincoln is behaving like a bunch of authoritarians. I am beside myself about this, and it further reinforces every single day my decision to walk away from it.
I couldn't agree more, Tara. It is a party in complete collapse. They are fundamentally changed in the last 4 years, and the change now is coming. Like the changes are coming with greater frequency and amplitude, and they're coming faster and faster, and they're bigger and bigger. I mean, 2 years ago it was, oh, so and so won't criticize the president over a policy issue. Now
Right.
it's, unless you immediately say the election was invalid and bow before this president, you will be thrown out of the Republican Party. You'll be expelled. I mean, we've had elected officials now having their committee assignments in state legislatures taken away because they won't come out and endorse the crazy theories
It's even
of
worse
a
than that,
phony.
Rick.
Mhm.
It's worse than that. Not only are they being threatened with committee assignments, but there are officials now that are being literally threatened. If
There are.
anybody has checked out Chris Krebs' lawsuit, Chris Krebs, the former head of the cybersecurity
Hmm.
department in Department of Homeland Security, who was fired because he stood up to Donald Trump and told the truth that this was the safest election in American history. And one of Donald Trump's lawyers, Joe DeGeneva, called for Chris Krebs to be assassinated, drawn and quartered for treason because he spoke the truth about this election. uh, they're suing him because there are threats now against him. And he is now joining a longer list of state and local Republican Party officials in various states who are targets on some wackadoodle right wing extremist website. They're not sure where the origin of it came from, where they have these officials in crosshairs and saying that they should be tried for treason and killed. This is the kind of lunacy that we're dealing with every day because Donald Trump, as the titular head now of the Republican Party of wingnuts, is continuing to call this election unfair and rallying his base to think that they're taking up some type of patriotic action to fight the, I don't know who, because apparently it includes Republicans as well. This is so dangerous and irresponsible. And I really hope that this doesn't end in bloodshed, Rick.
Tara, the people that are doing this, the people that are supporting this, they are not fit to serve. They are not fit to be in office. They are not fit to be in public life. And it is a grotesque and disgusting moment where we have a political party in this country so dedicated to one man that they are willing to countenance the death threats against public officials. It is too much. It is too far. They must be held to account. And I have I have long been known for having a sharp tongue and been known for having an edge to my public persona, which is of course the same as my private persona if you know me. But this idea that these non-ironic death threats, that these serious attempts to intimidate and terrify and cow and silence public officials, I have to ask these people that are sitting silently by about all this: is this really the country you want to live in? Is this really what you think the American Republic and a constitutional republic should look like? Do you really believe that threatening people because they have spoken the truth about Donald Trump is a public virtue? And you will see that these folks, until they're pinned down on it, will either remain silent, or they will tweet passive aggressive Bible verses, or they will pretend it didn't happen, or they'll say, I don't read Twitter, or they'll do everything they can to try to live in a world where the responsibility for these actions, the responsibility for these threats, doesn't ever redound to them. It is a, I'd say it's a disappointment, but at this point, it's just an indictment.
It is. And there's at least one Republican who's been willing to speak out, and that is former Governor of Ohio, John Kasich. Take a listen.
You know, I've just become convinced that these leaders are morally and ethically bankrupt. I don't know how they can look in a mirror. I'm flabbergasted about this. I mean, these are attorney generals. These are people who are in a position to be able to uphold the law. And Chris, the reason why my heart's bleeding is, I've been a Republican all of my lifetime, but I'm an American first. It's a tragedy for my party and a tragedy for our country that we're seeing this just morally and ethically bankrupt.
We feel you, brother.
Governor is
And
correct.
he's 100% correct. A lot of our hearts are bleeding over this, and we just hope that we don't actually see real blood in the streets once this is all said and done.
Yeah.
And if that happens, I don't want to be anywhere near Donald Trump when it's his turn to face judgment for it. On that note, let's bring in tonight's guest, Jim Galloway. Jim Galloway has been a writer and editor at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution for over 41 years. Over that time, he's covered religion, presidential politics, and he's run the foreign desk. He's also created the AJC's Political Insider blog, one of the South's most influential political news sites. Welcome to The Breakdown, Jim.
That's great to be here. First time I've watched. This looks like fun.
We do our best,
well,
Jim. We do our best.
Yes,
it's our little experiment, as we like to call it.
Right. We try to mix it up a little bit because without some levity, we'd all be, in a hole somewhere in the fetal position crying because there's just so much idiocy going on and dangerous stuff happening that we've got to try to bring up, some balance to it all because it's just too much sometimes.
I'd have this filled with grain alcohol.
I mean, Rick may actually have it filled with grain alcohol right now. We would never know.
I'll never tell.
Thus, the coffee cup. Jim, you've had quite the illustrious career. And last month, you announced that you would actually be retiring this January. Congratulations. Except that you're actually not going to retire quite just yet. You have to get through the Georgia primary. You actually decided to hold off on your retirement until the Georgia primary. And I get it because there's a lot happening. This is an unprecedented runoff happening here. The amount of money, the circumstances, a lame duck president, multiple recounts. I mean, Georgia is ground zero right now for some of this political chaos. How do you make sense of the moment that we're in right now?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And you're right. You're right. They persuaded me to delay retirement for 2 weeks for one pay period, I think. But this is kind of this is the culmination of a kind of an 50-year shift in Georgia politics where we've seen the Republicans, where we've seen suburbia kind of shift over into the Republican camp, and now we're seeing it shift back into the Democratic camp. We went through in 2002. We had that dreadful fight over a Confederate flag, over the state flag with the Confederate battle emblem. That stampeded all the white rural Republicans into the Republican camp. It's still kind of holding up the Republican Party. That's how they've kept the grip on the state capitol. But now we're seeing the Republican alliance between the suburbs and rural Georgia kind of split off again. And it's been quite fascinating. And of course, Stacey Abrams has played her role, a very large role over the last 4 years and such. You just can't walk away from something like that when it's just reaching a crescendo.
Rick?
Well, you've been a chronicler of Georgia politics for a very long time, and you've got a deeper insight into it than almost any other human being drawing breath. And I think you've described very accurately the sort of ebb and flow of the Republican demographic. I mean, there was a time when that donut of counties around Atlanta was the northern half of it, at least, was a very safe Republican territory. I mean, it's now become a hotly contested zone. And my questions to you are twofold. First off, do you think those Republicans who crossed over, and those independent and former Republicans in the northern tier counties up around Atlanta are going to stick with the sort of ticket split as they did with Biden this time, or do you think they're going to be drawn back just more to their sort of behavioral center? My second question is, how far down do you think the sort of disillusionment from a lot of very strong Trump supporters, the sort of very hard MAGA voters, is going to be as they sort of grapple with the fact that he's not going to get a miracle at the last minute. He's not going to be president in January, because there seems to be like a growing sense among Trump supporters that there's just not enough being done by Loeffler, Perdue, and others to support Trump.
That we could fill a couple hours with that. First of all, let's talk about the burbs. I think you're seeing something very permanent happening there. If you consider North Metro Atlanta, we have Cobb County on the 10 o'clock, Gwinnett County on the 2 o'clock, North Fulton on the noon position. Cobb was home to Newt Gingrich, right?
Right.
The 6th district runs into North Fulton. It's now Lucy McBath. She won it. She won it in a close race in 18. She just hammered Karen Handel in November. That it's gone. The Gwinnett seat was held by Rob Woodall. It's gone Democrat again to Carolyn Bordeaux. What's interesting here is that Gwinnett is a minority, a majority minority county now, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's got Asian, it's got Hispanic, and it's got African American. Okay. What's fascinating about North Fulton and Cobb is that both are 70% white, and yet in Cobb County we had the Cobb County Commission chairman is now African American for the first time. Every major countywide position there is African American. And of course, we've talked about North Fulton. That's the kind of the anchor for 6th district, and that was Lucy McBath's territory. And the key in both of those counties are college-educated white women, and they stuck with the party. They stuck with Democrats this time around. We had a tiny little back in 2018 when everybody was thinking this was just a fluke. We had a couple of runoff races, statewide runoff races. For Secretary of State and I think a PSC position. Now, generally speaking, those are all overwhelmingly Republican victories, and they were this time too. But in North Fulton, in every precinct in the city of Sandy Springs, which is kind of the population anchor there, every precinct there went blue, stayed blue in the runoff. And that tells you that those people are going to be habitual Democratic voters from now on. Now as we are reaching a serious situation with your Trump supporters. Okay, this is the problem is since Sonny Perdue took the governorship in 2002. All right, the Perdue cousins pretty much they kind of wrote the book for Donald Trump on how to conduct an election. If you'll recall, in 2002, Sonny Perdue, we had the flap over the flag. He was running against the Democratic incumbent Roy Barnes. He went into the rural areas of Georgia and he really pumped up that vote, to 60-70%. All right. Of the rural white vote, then he held on to the suburban vote and came out with a victory. David Perdue in 2014 pulled the same trick, went in a little bit harder on the rural vote. Okay, Donald Trump did the same thing and amped it up a little bit more. Brian Kemp did the same thing in 2018, and he was pulling 80-85% of the vote in rural Georgia counties. But you're going to hit a wall. That's a depopulated area.
Right.
It's shrinking in population. The saying here is God ain't making white men like he used to. And so so that Republican base is disappearing, and the problem is, and you've had some Democrats start to recognize it, is that you're going to have a very disaffected geographic section of Georgia that is going to be crying out for economic development. It can't get economic development because there's no health care. And you're going to have a population that's going to feel more stranded and not less. So it's a serious problem here.
I think that was a beautiful summary, Jim. This is why you are the expert, because you understand that
Yes.
there's been a huge ebb and flow, and this evolution of the suburban areas. I mean, it's iterating across other parts of the country also. I mean, if you scooch over to North Carolina, go outside of Charlotte, you'll see places in Mecklenburg, for instance, that used to be a heavily Republican county, which is now purple and trending blue, more blue every election cycle. So it's the suburban vote and the declining population, declining relevance of a lot of the rural vote. It's really going to reshape Georgia from a very red state to a much more dynamic purple and blue leaning state in the next couple cycles.
Do you remember during this virtual Republican convention that they had in August? There was a concerted effort to scare the bejesus out of suburban America.
White women.
Yep.
Yeah. Funny thing. In metro, if you take all the African Americans who live in Metro Atlanta, 90% of them live in the suburbs. They don't live in the city of Atlanta. They live in the burbs.
That goes to show you how much they stereotype things. You mean that Black people live in the suburbs, the ones that are supposed to come and burn down your houses and riot in the streets, that Donald Trump has protected the suburban housewives from? I guess they're
next door.
I got news for you. All right, they pay taxes, property taxes, just like you white people do on the same block in 2020 in Georgia. Speaking of that, this whole idea of the destruction of civilization type of narrative that the two Senate candidates out there, the Republicans, are trying to portray will happen. If you vote for Ossoff or Warnock, it's going to be the end of civilization as we know it. These scare tactics and fear mongering. You talked about this in a recent opinion piece that you wrote. Can you talk a little bit about the dynamics that are going on within the Republican Party, with the Georgia local officials, state and local officials, and what's happening with Donald Trump and the national Republicans? This is a fascinating dynamic that I don't think we've seen in a long time. And you've had this, the idea that the governor, the Secretary of State, his deputies have come out so forcefully against Donald Trump, pushing back against this fraud narrative and the dangers of what Trump is doing, versus the Senate candidates and what the national Republican narrative seems to be. This is an unbelievable conflict going on. Can you talk a little bit about what's happening there in Georgia among the Republicans, this infighting?
Right, and quite frankly, the Texas lawsuit has really crystallized the situation here. Because what you've got is this huge divide shaping up between your Republicans in the state capitol in downtown Atlanta and your Georgia Republicans over in Washington, D.C. You have on the D.C. side, of course, you have Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. They're locked in a January 5 runoff against Democrats Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff. They are highly dependent on the Republican base, on the Trump base. Runoffs are turnout elections. They've got to have Donald Trump on their side. They can't have him taking pot shots at them. So they have been very, very careful to uphold Trump's fiction that he had won the election. They called for the resignation of Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger here. They were very, very quick to endorse this Texas lawsuit, which would establish Texas sovereignty over the state of Georgia. I don't think people have really hear once they realize that that's the issue. I don't think they'll really like it. Then you've had U.S. House members from Georgia, Republican ones, all sign on to the Republican the Trump playbook on this. The problem here is that if you're if you're part of the federal government in Washington, you've got no say so over how elections are conducted. By and large, elections are governed by state law. And you've got these people over in Atlanta. You've got Governor Kemp. You've got Secretary of State Raffensperger. You've got the Lieutenant Governor. You've got Attorney General Chris Carr, who are all obliged to follow Georgia law on pain of some very severe penalties. Could include imprisonment if it goes too far. So they've got to follow the law, and that's what they've been saying that they have to do. Now it's gotten quite personal. In today's column, I've got a column that's up. It's actually the Sunday column, but I've posted it up this evening. I had a fellow over in Raffensperger's office direct me to a website on Parler. I think, is it Parler or Parlay? I think
Parler.
I think it's Parler. Yeah.
Parler. Okay. All right. And it is a list of enemies of the nation, and
Right.
it is mugshots with certain public officials in red crosshairs. All
I
right.
just mentioned that.
Yeah. Governor Kemp is in there. Lieutenant Governor Duncan is in there. Brad Raffensperger is in there. Gabe Sterling is in there. He's the elections official who went off on Donald Trump last week. And what's more, their home addresses are right there with it.
Outrageous.
In Governor Kemp's case, it's not the governor's mansion, which has plenty of Capitol Police surrounding it. It's his home in Athens, about 130 miles away.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up. Just really quickly, Jim.
You've got the situation. You've got the situation where you've got Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue saying, "Oh, beware of these scary Democrats," but in the state capitol, the scary people are in the Republican Party. You know, they're in the House.
That's a great point. And not only are you rightfully upset about that and concerned, so is our intelligence community. When I brought that up earlier, we found that out because Chris Krebs filed a lawsuit, and his attorney was, they saw this, they became aware of it because Chris Krebs is also one of those people in the crosshairs. And they made this public and said, this is what's happening, and the intelligence community is investigating this. They traced the IP address back to Russia. Doesn't mean that it's a Russian op, but we don't know. It doesn't matter, though, at this point. The point is that this is so serious that even the intelligence community is involved. And we saw what happened over the weekend in Michigan with the Secretary of State there, Benenson, armed crazies chanting and with bullhorns in front of her house when she was there with her 4-year-old doing Christmas decorations. I mean, this is only escalating, and all of these Republicans who stay silent are complicit in this, which is why I say, I pray to God that someone doesn't just make a decision to take this a step further and actually engage in violent behavior, because that's where we're marching toward. That's what we're marching down, and it's it scares the hell out of me where this goes, because so many people are unwilling. People who are in positions of power, like Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell, have said mum about this. What is it freaking going to finally take for them? I don't know.
Yeah, and here in Atlanta, I mean, the thing is, most of these people that we're talking about, I mean, Rick and I are old farts. You know, these people are young family people. They've got small kids.
Yeah, they don't care though. You know, Trump and the rest of them, they don't give a damn. Go ahead, Rick.
It's become part and parcel of what this movement on Trump's side is. They believe the threat of violence is an acceptable part of political dialogue, and I feel their pain. My family has had death threats now running for 5 years. they hunted down located my kids when they were in college. These people are maniacs, and we are very fortunate that no one's been in this current iteration where the tensions are very high. That violence has not struck an election official in Georgia, or for instance, the governor of Michigan, who was under the threat from a criminal conspiracy of terrorists supporting Donald Trump. So this is a very fraught time, and I think I would love to say we need to all step back from the edge, but these people are all over the edge. They're over the cliff. They're done. They are in a world now where they believe that threats of violence are an acceptable part of our political discourse, and it is it is it is something that I think is enormously destabilizing and enormously demoralizing for this country, and it makes us look around the world as if we are not the oldest functioning democracy, but rather a sort of third world hellhole. So I think they need to cut it out. I don't think they will cut it out.
Yeah, down here. We've got a historical precedent for talking ourselves into dreadful situations, and we're on the verge of doing it again.
Okay, before we let you go, Jim, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about this Senate runoff that's coming up, and do you think that there's the accusations against Loeffler and Purdue for their unethical behavior and basically their insider trading, taking advantage of COVID and some of the questionable actions that they've taken that have hurt the people of Georgia? Um, do you think it's getting any traction with the voters there in Georgia? Because it seems as though with everything else going on, what's the kind of the feel? Are those accusations getting any traction? Because it is an uphill battle for a Republican to win, not just one but two runoffs in the Senate in Georgia. What's the sense of how these races are looking right now?
Well, first of all, I would say it's an uphill battle for Democrats. I mean, I think you have to establish the fact that Republicans have an edge and they're the favorites in this. And it's hard to say whether it's cutting or not. It feels like it is, but we haven't had many polls, and quite frankly, I wouldn't trust many polls at this point because it's this is such a turnout-driven operation. But again, I go back to the suburbs. All right, and if you're talking about insider trading, that's not something that's going to register down in South Georgia. People down in South Georgia don't have a whole lot of that. I mean, they don't live and die by their 401ks. That's a suburban thing, and I think suburban people do understand that. They understand that with their 401ks, they can't opt in and opt out. They're in there for the ride, and whether it goes up or down. They're afraid to take money out. They're afraid they're in there for the long haul. So they do understand somebody getting preferential treatment in those cases, and I think it does hurt them, hurt Purdue and Loeffler with suburban voters. On the other hand, what they're doing is both. You got two Democrats, two Republicans, and each side is running as a team. So for good or ill. And that means Warnock and Ossoff are running as a team as well. And what we're seeing right now is that Republicans are focusing very much on Raphael Warnock, who is the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church. It once had Martin Luther King Jr. and his dad as co-pastors there, and they've gone hard at him. It's your traditional Republican kind of darken the skin of your African American opponent. Quote him saying as many outrageous and things as you can. I think in last week's debate between Warnock and Loeffler, I think we counted Loeffler saying radical liberal Raphael Warnock 14 times. If it were a drinking game, you would have been quite smashed.
You started to touch on it a little bit. I was going to ask you what role race plays in this runoff, because I think it's kind of
a mighty role.
Yes.
It plays a mighty role.
Yeah,
role.
Unfortunately,
and I think it is going to be a hell of a ride here for the next 3.5 weeks.
Yep,
it will. And just think of this. I mean, we just had the start of Hanukkah. We got to get through Christmas. We got to get through New Year's. and then we get to the election.
Someday I'm
Well,
going to get a vacation, but we'll see. Well, Jim Galloway, thank you so very much for joining us tonight. You are an amazing scholar of Georgia, and we have learned a lot, and we really appreciate you being with us.
I had a great time. Thanks a lot.
thank you so much, Jim. After that runoff, Jim Galloway is going to get that much well-deserved vacation after 41 years of covering politics down there in Georgia. So best of luck to you, Jim. Thanks. Man, this Georgia race is, I wonder if the dynamics would be the same if Trump wasn't acting like such an ass. He's really set the tone for what's happening down there. And it's a lot.
I think it would be a very different race. I think it would be a fundamentally different set of questions being asked down in Georgia. And I think, frankly, it would probably be much more likely to go to the Republicans if it was just a neutral grounded situation right now without Trump blowing everything up and making it all about him. And frankly, turning off a lot of his own voters in this race, because look, these Trump voters, they will set themselves on fire for him. Mitch McConnell, not as
They've
much.
said so.
Yeah, yeah, they will. So the Trump haughty caucus, as I like to call them. But we're going to see where that goes.
Yeah. Well, let's see where the next part of the show goes. I believe we have a segue.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
That's
I don't know if that
fucking
was one of
nightmare
ours.
fuel, guys.
Oh God, we can't unsee it. We can't unsee it. Oh, the sound. That literally made my skin crawl.
Can we never show that again? Please, never.
Okay, that I don't know. Was that a viewer idea or was that in house? Eric, it's in house. That was okay. That was an in house production. But we still want your ideas for our segues. So send them in, folks, at #breakdownsegue. So because we can't have our in-house guys creeping us out with that kind of stuff anymore. But no, I'm just kidding. They do a great job. But #breakdownsegue. We want to hear your ideas as well because there's plenty of material out there, clearly. And for those who don't get the joke, that was Congressman Louis Gohmert of Texas, who's part of the Freedom Cuckoo Caucus. And they had a press conference the other day railing about all kinds of things. And while he was speaking, his tooth literally fell out. And it's on camera. You can see it. And he tucks it into the side of his cheek while he's talking. He doesn't skip a beat. I give him credit. He just kind of did.
Goddamn chipmunk.
Right. One of the and just kept talking craziness. And you see him kind of adjust it a couple times during the press conference, but it was so gross. And of course, everything, the internet always wins. People made all kinds of memes out of it, and we did too. So that's where that comes from. Good grief. Some people point out that he had
never sleep again.
No, he had COVID, and they're saying that your teeth apparently falling out is one of the long haul possible symptoms of COVID too. So, I mean, I don't know. It's gross and disgusting, but now everyone is familiar with Louis Gohmert and his teeth falling out. All right. I think we have a caller, Rick.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Let's go to our first caller tonight. Greetings. What's your name and where are you from?
Oh, I guess that's me.
Yes, that's you.
This is Patricia. I'm in Edmonds, Washington. That's just north of Seattle, Washington State. Yeah. And so it's, it's blue as far as the eye can see out here. But I have lived in both Tallahassee, Florida, and Spartanburg, South Carolina. So
you know it.
2 states that touch border with Georgia. So I kind of have a little inkling of the dynamics there. But my question is kind of a general one, and that is, what is the best way to have an impact on these 2 runoff elections as a non-Georgia resident, other than donating to the campaigns, which I've done, of course, but and contributed to the Lincoln Project too. But anyway, yeah.
We thank you for that.
So that's basically my question. As a quote unquote outsider, what's the best thing to do?
The best thing to do is to volunteer to do calls into the state. In this era of COVID, that's really the most effective way you can help motivate voters in the state. There are a ton of groups that are doing it, and we'll post a link soon on the Lincoln Project Twitter feed for people who want to volunteer, not only through our operation, but through Fair Fight, Black Pack, and others that are doing a lot of work on the ground in Georgia. Thank you so much for your question. And you're absolutely right. Those are 2 places that border right on the great state of Georgia. If you drive north about 8 minutes from my house, you were in the state of Georgia. So it is
literally the Florida-Georgia line.
Literally Florida-Georgia line. You could throw a rock to it. So
yeah, that's
let's take another caller.
Oh, we can't hear her.
You can't hear.
There you are. We hear you now.
Okay,
welcome.
Yay. Okay. My name is Ellen. I'm from Maryland with my mask that is quoted by one of the governor's little memes.
Yes, that's right.
But,
wear the damn mask.
Yeah, I loved it. But anyway, I have a question about the Georgia election. And since there seems to be so many Republicans that are trying to question the election for Trump post-election, what is the possibility, other than voter suppression, that Republicans in Georgia will fix this election?
That's a good question. Rick,
it's a great question.
We were supposed to ask Jim that question, and we didn't get to it. But I don't think that these Georgia officials are going to, if they haven't done anything by now, I don't think they're going to do anything overt to try to fix this election for Republicans, because the world is literally watching every single aspect of this election. They couldn't get away with any shenanigans if they wanted to. So I don't think we would have to worry about that the same way if it was not a worldwide spotlight on what's happening right now. It is going to be the most scrutinized election since the presidential election that we can imagine. So I don't think they've already shown courage thus far, and I don't see them retreating. Do you, Rick?
I think look, we've been very hard on Republicans in the Lincoln Project, and rightly so. But you have to praise the people that do the right thing, no matter what party they're from. And guys like Raffensperger and Gabe Sterling have stood up, and many other people in Georgia have stood up.
Even the governor
said, we're not going to be, even the governor, who has been a big Trump supporter, have stood up and said, we're not going to let you lie about our state. We're not going to let you diminish the results of what we ran, a free and fair election. We're just not going to do it. And we're not going to let you cherry pick the idea, only the presidential race was secretly manipulated by this giant cabal.
Nobody
everything else that we won, we won all those other things. Those are fine. So, long story short, those certainly are people that have shown some bravery. It's better to encourage them right now than to do anything else. And it's going to be tough on them, because they're going to be looked at by both sides with a very skeptical eye. Let's go to our next caller.
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm from Utah. And my question today is if our guy Steve Schmidt is going to take the plunge and challenge Mike Lee in 2022.
People who have said that Steve Schmidt should challenge Mike Lee for the U.S. Senate. An awful lot of people have mentioned that to him and to us, and we've heard a lot about that in the last few months. And I think you'll know when you know. I think there's going to be a moment where you will get an answer on that, and we'll see where that goes.
In the meantime, your state your AG in Utah signed on to this asinine Texas lawsuit. So You folks out there in Utah who don't agree with this, call your AG and tell them to cut the shit and stop being anti-democracy. Thank you for your question. So, Rick, before we take another caller, there's been some more lowlights going on. We do the highlights sometimes, and then there's lowlights. And COVID is still raging. People are still dying at a rate that's 2 times 9/11s every day. It is just remarkable that Donald Trump has basically given up being president. He doesn't really care that much. Maggie Haberman was on CNN tonight talking about how he's isolated himself in the White House. His circle is even closer than it was, closed in more than it was before. Most people don't really even want to talk to him because they don't want to get yelled at and tell him, no, you didn't win the election. And that he's really uninterested in doing the job anymore. Meanwhile, he goes golfing and he tweets and people are dying. So I think we should show our meanwhile of what's happened since the last time we were together.
The U.S. has suffered its deadliest day yet from the coronavirus.
The United States has had more than 3,000 Americans die.
We lost more Americans today than we lost in 9/11.
That's nearly one Pearl Harbor every 24 hours.
The nation's doctors holding back tears as they warn Americans that the worst is ahead.
We're likely to lose another 250,000 people between now and January.
It is unclear to all of us here on the front line how we are going to manage and handle this.
With the pandemic now pushing many hospitals to the brink, more are being forced to choose between caring for COVID patients and those with other serious health conditions.
Rudy Giuliani was released from Georgetown Hospital yesterday after being diagnosed with COVID-19. Giuliani says he received some of the same medications as President Trump, exposing how COVID-19 has become a disease of the haves and the have-not.
Amid all of this, the current president is intensifying his campaign to overthrow the results of the election and somehow stay in office despite being voted out.
He's not rallying anyone to wear masks. He's not talking about our dead.
He just does not care.
We are watching a lack of action by the federal leadership of this country that feels almost criminal.
Democratic Congressman James Clyburn threatening to subpoena the CDC director over allegations the Trump administration tried to hide and destroy evidence about their COVID response.
Trump always made fun of me. I'm always wearing this mask. But let me tell you something. It's a patriotic thing to do. It really is. You're helping other people.
Rick, what's so heartbreaking about that is that none of this had to happen. It didn't have to be like this, right? And while Donald Trump runs around the White House waddles around the White House, throwing temper tantrums about losing because he can't stand the idea that he actually lost something and he can't litigate his way out of it. I hate the idea that millions of Americans are losing their family members. There are thousands, tens of thousands, 285,000 families who have lost loved ones throughout this. And tens of thousands of those did not have to happen. And here we are having to suffer through another 41 days of having this bastard in the White House, completely indifferent, abdicating his responsibilities, and the Republicans standing there silent, letting this happen, letting this turn into not only an anti-democratic party, but a death cult. And it's all on Donald Trump's watch. The deaths of these people, that is on his watch. And he will have to forever live with that. And so will every single one of those Republicans who have sat by and done nothing but enable him as Americans continue to die. Shame on every single one of them. Inauguration Day can't come fast enough. And shame on them for also letting Donald Trump run around frivolously talking about who he wants to pardon. It's being reported that Trump now, that's his new thing. He's all about, oh, you want a pardon? You get a pardon. You get a pardon. It's like freaking Oprah giving away cars, giving away pardons here to people who he haven't even asked him for. Oh, you need a pardon? This is absurd. When we've talked about this before, there's a lot of people that are worthy out there of the mercy of a pardon that are getting overlooked because Donald Trump is, wants to reward his felonious friends for the things that they've done. Let's take a look at Trump's pardon to-do list. Joseph Roy Cohn. That's good stuff.
Heard about somebody today who just hired Paul Manafort's lawyer or something, and I thought, what the hell are you thinking, bro?
Right. What? Like what?
Like what?
By the way, we should have added Ken Paxton to that list, the AG over there in Texas, because he's been under federal indictment for stuff in 2015. He's under investigation again now for bribery. He's got multiple former staffers who have leveled complaints against him for bribery, and that's the rumor as to why he's doing this filing this lawsuit, this absurd lawsuit. It's because he's trying to curry favor to get a pardon. So we got to add Ken Paxton to that list next. Come up with a clever, pithy name for him. All right. I think we have one last caller for tonight.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Pleasure to meet you. I'm 20 miles west of Cooper Union, and I had the honor of being in the audience for your kickoff about 8 months ago.
So much.
And
it feels like a lot longer than it was.
Right.
That was my last night out for 2020. Unfortunately, we have a high-risk family member, so not the way I wanted to end it, but not the worst way to go. Quick challenge for you guys. Would you please rebrand Trump's residence from Mar-a-Lago to Mar-a-Loserville?
Oh, I like it.
I like it. And
I'm tweeting away again in Mar-a-Loserville, saying stuff that's batshit crazy. 80 million people voted you out on your ass, the biggest loser of the presidency. I mean, you guys can write this stuff. I mean,
leave it to a good Jersey guy to come up with something clever. I like
it stick
Park. That's Rick Wilson.
I'm on it. I love it. I'm your Huckleberry.
Make me an honorary pirate, please.
All right.
I pass it along as a free donation.
We will send the flag.
Thank
you so much. We really appreciate your support and for coming out. And yeah, it was almost a year ago that we wrote that op-ed in the New York Times. Next week, it'll be the 1-year anniversary of the founding of the Lincoln Project. So thank you so much. And it was a big night for us at Cooper Union. And it's been a long journey since then, but it's been so worthwhile meeting and getting to know the folks that have been supporting us, that have been fighting alongside us, and it's a tremendous honor.
And it's my understanding that there is a special next week about all of that, so folks can stay tuned next Thursday. A little teaser. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm liking it. I wrote it down, and it's funny because earlier today I was talking to my good friend Michael D'Antonio, who's been on the show, friend of the show. He's written Trump biographies. I encourage everyone to read Michael's book, The Truth About Trump, and he's got a new book out now called High Crimes. But anyway, Michael was telling me how that some of his friends have been talking about Trump's presidential library being built down there next to Mar-a-Lago, and they're turning it into. They've been talking about kind of doing a spoof, how they would turn it into a mock White House, and you'd have to pay an entrance fee, and you could sleep in the Lincoln bedroom for a certain price, and you could sit at the fake Resolute desk, and live the life of Donald Trump in the White House, and they would turn it into like an amusement and call it Trumpville or something like that. And I was cracking up at that, but Mar-a-Loser is an even better name. I can't wait to see what our creative geniuses come up with that idea. I can't wait. Oh my goodness. All right. On that note, we're going to do our call to action as we wrap up this week's show. Throughout the show tonight, we've been talking about this Texas lawsuit, which is just another example of Donald Trump trying to litigate his way out of his problems, something he's tried to do his entire career. He's what they call a vexatious litigant in the legal community, someone who constantly abuses the legal system and files frivolous lawsuits. Trump is one of the most litigious people in the world, and he often loses. He talks about winning so much. He is a legal loser most of the time, and he will be again. And the fact that there are actually 106 members of Congress and 18 states now total who are engaged in this attempt to try to overturn and disenfranchise 20 million votes in this country is absolutely outrageous and unacceptable. And as a constitutional republic, we, the American people, have the ability to rise up in righteous anger and do something about it. And what can you do? What can you do to try to help stop this downright seditious act going on right now by the Republican Party? Just watching this happen is trying to dismantle our democracy, literally, with this nonsense to try to placate this lunatic. Well, you can call your representatives. You can call your attorneys general, find out who it is in your state. I believe on our Lincoln Project website, we have the information, or you can go and you can see who your attorney general is in your state and how to contact them. This is what they need to know, that there will be consequences for this behavior. They're doing this because they think they'll be rewarded for it in some way. But every single one of these people work for you. They are public servants. They're paid for by your tax dollars. So do not let them get away with this. If you are unhappy with what's going on, let them know it. And make note of your state and local elections in your states. If you live in one of these 18 states, make a note of it. Remember your state elections. There they are. Write it down. Don't forget who these people are, because they do not deserve to have their jobs. If there was ever a reason to vote your local officials, your state officials out of office, this is it. Because they are literally co-conspirators in an attempt to disenfranchise millions of voters in this country in an attempt to engage in an anti-democratic act. And shame on every single one of them. They are in Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, and West Virginia. And we have not forgotten about Arizona, whose AG filed a separate brief in support of this case. So if you live in any one of those states, please make your voice heard. Because that's the only way these people understand how to paying a price is at the ballot box.
Another great show, and you have hosted ably and spectacularly as always. Folks, I want to also drive your attention to our sister show that happens during every Tuesday and Thursday in 2:30 East Coast time. That's Vote for America with Jennifer Horn. Take a look at it. She is terrific, and she is doing some great work in keeping the focus on Georgia. And we will look forward to seeing you guys again next week.
Yes, indeed. And as always, we're going to leave you with a clip from the Lincoln Project podcast with a Democratic strategist down there talking about how Georgia has been ground zero for Trump's month-long temper tantrum. Good night from the breakdown. We'll see you next Tuesday.
But unfortunately, this has been just a month-long temper tantrum from this president that we have been negatively affected here in Georgia. I mean, these sort of baseless, false claims that the president is making Georgia more radical, is making Georgia more dangerous at a time when we have election workers that are receiving threats. Our Secretary of State, our Republican Secretary of State spouse is receiving explicit sexual text messages that are totally inappropriate from supporters of Donald Trump. And you had a person come out yesterday and this week in Georgia say that he wanted the 2 U.S. senators to condemn this type of behavior. And so I'm not going to let it get in the way of some of our democratic success here in Georgia, but it is taking an effect on the American people, in particular here in Georgia.
time to remove the word republic from the Republican Party. These hypocrites in office don't care about our republic. They don't care about our democracy or the Constitution they swore on a Bible to protect. No. In standing behind a president who has brought international shame to the Republican Party, we have seen their true colors. And they are treasonous, unpatriotic, downright despotic, but most importantly, dangerous. Because while Trump has shown himself to be feckless and pathetic and unmoored in the chaos he has attempted to sow, there are others waiting in the wings, waiting for their turn to dismantle our democracy. And they are not so vacuous and insecure and self-absorbed. From this presidential embarrassment, they see a full and total shift to authoritarianism. Those are Republicans? We think not. We are watching, and so is the world.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Just watching my algorithms get crushed. I guess I did something to piss off the Instagram gods, so hopefully you're seeing this stuff anyway. We'll do what we can. Talk to you soon.